Hey there. I don't often talk about PJ on the podcast, but he's my partner in both business and life. And for those who know him, you know he's pretty amazing. He's smart, he's energetic, he's very supportive, and he complements my energy perfectly. But when I first met PJ and I knew these things right away, I kind of had to take a step back. I said to myself, wow, this is a guy that I want to keep around. You see, at the time, I'd fallen into this cycle of getting into relationships, connecting, even falling in love, or what I thought was love, and then a few months later, we'd break up. I was always too much, too ambitious, too wild, too loud, too driven, too outspoken, too opinionated, too truthful. And this was something that kept coming up. So we'd go our separate ways, and then I'd see them months, sometimes years later, and they'd say things like, oh, if you weren't so much, we would still be together. And it gave me a bit of a complex. It made me think that my too muchness would send people away. So when I met PJ and realized how great he was, I said to myself, okay, I'm not going to mess this up. I want this relationship to last. I'm going to make sure that I'm not too much this time. And so what I did was I played it off like I wasn't this energetic, very opinionated, very ambitious woman. I kind of knocked the edges of my whole self. I presented as a whole lot calmer, more reasonable, more collected than I really was. And while I was still me in all the ways, it was like I had turned the dial down. I had muffled who I really was. I had muted myself. I'd given him a slightly less version of me. I suppressed some of the wilder traits that made me me. And not that I became someone else, but I hid some of the parts of me that I thought could be scary or make him feel unsure or about me or what I might say or do next. And guess what? That strategy, it didn't actually work for long because I just couldn't contain who I was and I wasn't being true to me, and I knew that. I wasn't being truly authentic. I wasn't showing all the parts of me in what was going to be my primary relationship. And guess what? I've done this same thing in my business at different times in my career. I've had that fear that I need to rein in who I am to be more palatable, more professional, more acceptable to those around me. And I bet that you have done the same thing at some point, because as businesswomen, we often have to grow into the role of becoming a successful business owner. And that might mean that we shrink down parts of us. We don't voice our opinions as loudly as we wish we did. Even when we know they're the truth, we become a more acceptable version of ourselves. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about how to step back into our most authentic selves in both life and business, because living authentically and bravely as ourselves is the only way that we can feel that spark, that creative fire within us. It's the only way to truly love our lives and our businesses. And why would we not want a business and life that is truly ours, that consists of a version of us that is lit up and inspired and joyful? So that's what we're talking about today. And if you're wondering, PJ did stick around after I stopped acting palatable and muted, after I started being more me and maybe a little more too much. In fact, he liked me a whole lot more that way. At least I'm pretty sure he did, seeing as he's sitting in the room right next to where I'm recording this right now after over 33 years of me being my authentic, opinionated, fiery, and ambitious self. So let's go. Hello. Welcome back to the HerBusiness Podcast. I'm Susie Daphnis. I'm your host and I'm the CEO of HerBusiness. And today's episode is all about creating a business and a life where you feel lit up. It's about coming home to yourself and reclaiming your identity and refusing to dim your fire. Because for many women I know, and this might be true for you too, the more successful your business becomes, the more responsibility you take on, the higher you rise, the bigger your team, the bigger your income. Sometimes the feeling can be that you need to become someone different, and it can be hard to maintain your sense of self. And it's something we don't often talk about, because who would want to admit that their spark has been dimmed, that they're not being 100% themselves, or that they're not loving life and business and who they're showing up as? The very brave few would admit that. But today we're talking about it. And we're talking about how to get the spark back and how to relight that fire inside you. Because isn't that how you want to live business and life? knowing that as you're helping other people, as you're expanding yourself, as you're reaching to the breadths of your possibility, that you are doing that feeling 100% you. Now, this episode is really important because the more you that you become in your business, the more magnetic you are to potential alliances, to clients, to opportunities, to doors opening up. And I can't wait to dive into this one, because when we can run a business from that way of being rather than obligation, when we can stop muting ourselves and putting ourselves into boxes that we never wanted in the first place, we create a whole new way of doing business. So I want to start by asking you a question. And if you have a place where you can journal or write something down now, great, go ahead and do that. If you're on the go, just have a think about it as we chat here. So the question is, when and where in your life do you feel most lit up? So not just happy or content or satisfied, but truly alive, energized, unstoppable. Is it when you're creating something new, when you're surrounded by community or family, when you're in nature, when you're totally unplugged, when you're on your own, when you're hearing your own thoughts clearly without chaos and noise? There's no right answer here, and it's totally individual, but noticing your answer is really important. And the other part of that question is, how often are you actually creating space for that kind of experience in your life? And I know for me, there is one clear recipe for me to step into that way of being. It's when I'm traveling, and it doesn't need to be a vacation. In fact, I don't feel this way when I'm fully relaxed mode, kind of in the hammock. I prefer it when I'm traveling, but I've got something going on, something in the works, something inspiring me. And what happens is this incredible sense of freedom comes over me to work and create in a whole new way. Ideas come more naturally, more easily, inspiration comes more, and it's like I can just be more me. And there's certain parts on the planet where I feel even more me. That's not the only place though. I also feel really alive, really tapped in, really lit up when I'm working with women business owners on their strategies, when we're having those bigger, deeper conversations. And just recently I spoke to a woman who said she felt trapped by her business after working for years and years, over 10 years in this business, and still not prioritizing paying herself a proper salary. Now, helping women like that discover that there are ways to make their business more sustainable, to not have those ups and downs in cash flow, to not feel totally burdened and feeling like they have to outperform themselves year after year, seeing the light in their eyes, knowing that there's a way to live better, to grow better, to create a business that serves them more, that's what turns up the pilot light inside of me. So I wanted to share those two examples, because when I get to help a woman who's worked longer hours than ever before just to keep her head above water and help her realize that she can change her business model, can take time back for herself while making more money, that totally lights me up. So what lights you up? What makes you feel most alive? And I encourage you to write this down when you get the opportunity and put it somewhere where you can see it every day and come back to it for inspiration. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. And what you'll find is that there's common threads. Maybe what makes you feel alive is when you feel freedom or creativity or connection or impact or a sense of space. And you want to pull on those threads and see where they lead, because they're clues for what your soul is really asking for. But the other thing is you can bring that into your daily life. You can bring it into how you're showing up in your home, in your business. One of the things that is kind of anecdotal, but I thought I'd share with you, is that in my 20s, a big part of my identity and how I showed up was music. I've never played music, but I listened to it all day long, all night, in the middle of the night, on weekends, in clubs, at gigs, at concerts. And my favorite type of music was rock music. Too much? Maybe. But that's what I liked. Loud rock music made me feel so alive, so on fire. Now, in my late 50s, it can feel a bit too much gravitating towards that type of music. Surely I should be more in my lounge era, is my judgy self of myself, right? Sounds silly, but this is still on path with the conversation of we leave parts of ourselves behind as we grow, as we age, as we go into different periods of our life. And this episode is about reclaiming some of those parts. Now, if you're struggling to identify exactly what those moments are that make you feel most lit up, then let's go a little bit deeper. This is another prompt that would again work well with a journal, but if you're on the go, just think this through. How do you feel when you're in alignment with your true essence? Now, what do I even mean by that? Let's look at this. Look at it this way. What does the version of you who feels energized, bold, spacious, powerful look like? What are the signs for you that you've drifted away from that? Because sometimes it's easier to see what's not working than what's working. So what are the environments or people or places or activities that have you not feel energized or bold or spacious or like you can speak up or be powerful? Because sometimes this shift where we lose some of ourselves, it happens slowly. It creeps in. It's a quiet voice of doubt that tells us to shrink or not be too big for our boots or to just second guess ourselves. When I'm operating from my true essence, everything comes into alignment. I have energy, I have clarity, I have confidence, the words flow. Even when I'm stretching outside of my comfort zone, I can make decisions more easily. But when I've drifted from who I truly am, I feel scattered, I feel exhausted, I second guess all my decisions. And I notice that I'm chasing things I want rather than attracting them. I'm forcing rather than allowing. And it's usually a sign that I'm not 100% fully being me or fully being present, that I may have moved into people-pleasing or the weight of responsibilities and obligations instead of leading from my purpose. And that can show up as burnout. That might sound familiar, or being stuck in indecision, or creating things that look good on paper but that you actually are not excited about, you feel flat about. On the other side, when you're tapped in, you know it. You move with clarity. You feel your power. And that's not a coincidence because at those times you are truly aligned. So my invitation is take note of what brings you back to yourself. Those moments where you feel, oh, there's the joy. I'm doing what I love. I feel like more me. And when you feel off course, look at what am I chasing right now that's not really mine? What am I taking action on that isn't really in alignment with what I really want? What am I doing out of obligation? Where am I feeling trapped? You'll see where all this is going because this episode is about whether being too much is actually the very thing that makes you magnetic. And so when I talk about being too much, it's about how we judge ourselves. Am I too ambitious? Do I want too much? Am I too opinionated, too sensitive, too confident, too loud? And I get it. We don't want to be that person, the one that sucks the oxygen out of the room, the one that's trying so hard to be fun and popular or get attention. And I've definitely been judgy of that type of person. And I would judge myself if I was showing up that way too, which means what we do is we self-edit. And here's a way that that can show up. So, for example, maybe you've got a vision for your business that is bigger than others around you can see or envision for you, and perhaps that makes others uncomfortable. Or maybe you want to do something for yourself, but others judge it as indulgent, even though it's something you've worked hard to be able to do for yourself. And this can have us feel the need to shrink, to soften, to say less, to second guess our dreams and our capabilities. And if you've ever done that, you're not alone. And this does come up. And it even comes up before we start a business. And you will have seen this, maybe in your own life, maybe with other women. Like being too much by being ambitious and wanting more than a side hustle, or too bold for dreaming bigger than those around you, or too emotional for caring deeply about your work and your clients, or too opinionated for speaking with conviction, or too showy for getting out there on social media, or too direct when you lead, or too successful when you surpass others' expectations or even your own expectations. And these moments don't stop when your business is just getting started. They keep going when you raise your prices, when you get that bigger contract, when you create more wealth, when you get more traction, more fame. And also when you say no to something you don't want, to a client or a collaboration that really isn't in line with what you want. When you decide you want more ease and not just more revenue. When you decide you want more space and not as much hustle. When you decide that you're going to rise above the average and not follow the path that others follow. Or maybe it's when you speak with authority, unapologetically owning your expertise. And maybe you feel like you're too much when others expect you to stay in your lane. I can't tell you how many times in my business journey when the feeling of being too much has come up, whether it's my big ideas or my visibility or getting acknowledgements or making my ambitions or my wins known. And I have often downplayed my own success so that others wouldn't be uncomfortable or that I wouldn't be seen to be braggy. And I know I'm not alone in that. I've softened my tone. I've over-explained my decisions to be more relatable. I've kept my big visions private more times than I can count, so it would be less threatening to others and safer for me. Now, yesterday I was speaking to a friend who has 2 successful businesses running at the same time. And she said that often when she meets someone new, she'll only tell people about one business because when she's talked about both businesses running successfully simultaneously, their eyes just glaze over. And they don't understand how that could even be true. Isn't it nuts that she would dim her fire because someone else cannot handle the heat? But it happens. And being too much might be the very thing that's going to make you more magnetic to others, including your potential clients. And every time I have reclaimed the space that is mine, every time that I have leaned into the parts of me that I might have judged in the past as being too much, is led to growth, to more impact, to deeper alignment with who I really am. Does it still feel uncomfortable? Yes. Does it feel vulnerable? Absolutely. Does fear still pop its ugly head up? Of course it does. But I remind myself to stay committed to moving forward and taking other women with me. So if you've ever worried that you're being too much, hear me. You are not the problem. Your vision and the size of it, your ambition, they're not the problem. Your fire, it's never the problem. I believe that your too much energy, that part of you that keeps dreaming bigger and beckons you to be more bold, is exactly the energy that your business, your clients, and the world needs right now. What if that being who you truly are is the very next thing that you need to be more of? What if taking up that space for yourself brings you unimaginable joy, growth, and fulfillment? And guess what else reclaiming your fire can help with? It can help you in all areas of your business, in your marketing, in your attracting clients, in your collaborations, in your getting known. And where it starts is really connecting with the woman behind the business, with what brings you joy that has nothing to do with work, with who you're being when you're not leading and managing and planning and wearing the business owner hat. And you know I ask you to wear the business owner hat a lot if you listen to this show, if you're part of my community. But what did you love before the KPIs and the budgets and the team meetings? Watch what bubbles up when you think about it. Maybe it's the part of you that loved to write or dance or sing or daydream, or a version of you that just didn't edit her ideas or self-expression to fit into what's appropriate for business. The real you before the accolades and algorithms and expectations. What if you put effort into reconnecting with her? I had a member say to me just this week, I need to let go of the habits, the fear and insecurity to make the leap to my next life phase. And she said what she wants is to be more bold and savvy, decisive and confident, a leader who listens, lifts and lights up for herself and for others. And I love that so much for her because it's not just about lighting others up, it's about being lit up ourselves. And it can look like creating space to hear your own voice again. It looks like letting yourself off the hook for not being the business 24/7. To really looking at how do I more align my business with who I am now? Because who you were when you started your business may be very different to who you are now. I know for me, I was 27. I felt like I had a lot to prove. I had no runs on the board. Now in my late 50s, I have lots of runs on the board. I have nothing to prove. And I feel more and more comfortable that the more I can just be me, the more fun I'm going to have. And maybe that's true for you too. So you can evolve. You can reintroduce old parts of yourself into who you're being now. You can step into a new chapter. You can reclaim those parts that might have gone quiet. Often we talk about evolution and change and identity, and we think that we need to reinvent ourselves. And that idea is great, but sometimes we just need to remember who we were and remember those parts of us that we've buried. And maybe for you, these are the parts of you that got quiet after being in business for a while. Maybe they're the parts that you labelled unprofessional or impractical or not on brand. Maybe the parts that aren't as polished or presentable. But the truth is, those parts might be the most joyful, authentic, creative parts of you. And just because you haven't accessed them for a while doesn't mean they're gone. They're still there. We just need to reintroduce ourselves to them and to embrace them as part of us that we love and that we honour. Even if they're not perfect, even if they don't always say the right things. So if you feel disconnected or like your fire is dimmed, I want you to hear this as a call to come home to yourself, to find that too muchness in you, because it is magnetic. When you let us see it, it is magnetic. And this is about remembering who you truly are. because you've spent years being everything to everyone, clients, team, family. And so it's easy to forget the parts of us that once lit us up, right? Because we have so many obligations. But those parts are there. And so let's tap in and see if we can't bring them to the surface. Let's hear what they have to say. Let's coax out that authentic version of ourselves. But how do we do that? My mentor says you need to create the conditions. What does that mean? It means we need stillness, time away from the noise, to hear that wisdom again, to hear what those other parts of us have to say. We need curiosity. So letting go of needing to have it all figured out. We need community, safe spaces with people who reflect our power, our possibility, not just who we were or how we've shown up in the past. And I want to give a quick shout out to my mentor, Cherie Healy, and the mastermind I'm in that Cherie runs, and those women who have, in the last 12 months, helped me step more and more into being okay with showing more of me. Another friend of mine says, I like Susie Unplugged. That's the Susie I like. That's the Susie I want to see more of, Susie Unplugged. And you get what she means, right? She's like, unplugged, just raw, acoustic guitar version. Not the auto-tuned version of Susie. And we need bravery. We need to be brave to make these choices. But know that when we do that, we just feel more and more alive. And that next version of you, which is kind of the whole version of you, she's not waiting for permission. She just needs space. And she's waiting for you to invite her back. And guess what? That can be terrifying. It can be scary. Fears come up. The fear of judgment, of what if they think I'm too much? Or what if they think I'm not enough? There's the fear of rejection. What if people like the old version of me, the polished version of me more? What if they don't stick around when I change? And there's this deep fear of both failure and success. What if I go all in on this truer version of me and it doesn't work? Or worse, what if it does work and now everything has to change? And there can be a real fear of visibility. Being fully seen can be vulnerable. No more hiding behind a facade or showing up how others expect. It means owning your story, your voice, your vision. And that's incredibly vulnerable. And there's a fear of letting others down too. Maybe you worry that if you change, you'll outgrow your audience, your industry, or your old commitments. The guilt of shifting away from what has worked before can be heavy. But playing small, it doesn't actually protect you. It just disconnects you from your power. The less plugged in we are to our fire, if we let that pilot light go off, we're not helping anybody. So that is even riskier. Playing small is risky. Being fully expressed is risky. But so is not being fully expressed. Because when we stay quiet and confined and contorted or behind the scenes, the risk is that we lose ourselves and we wake up years later to wonder what happened to the time that's gone past and to the person who we truly are. And you're not alone if you have these fears. They naturally come up. But I encourage you to listen to that tug, listen to that voice that's saying, I know there is more of me, but I'm scared to step into that. The work you're doing is not just building a successful business, it's also building a business that reflects who you are becoming. That's the scarier part. But I invite you to do that. And here's the thing. Your next chapter is not just choosing a new way. It's about choosing a way that feels more natural to you, that is more authentic. And I can bet you it's going to be more magnetic as well. So there is a massive difference running a business from how we think we should be running it and who we think we should be to actually just putting more of ourselves into it. So I want you to prioritize that lit up feeling and start normalizing what you're doing and how you're showing up and say, does this energize me? Does this feel like I'm tapped in? Or do I feel like I'm putting on a show and I'm exhausted? And really scheduling in what excites you first and making space for what fuels you. And so rather than filling our calendars to the brim on stuff that doesn't light us up, how do we fill it with things, enough things that keep our light on, that keep us juiced up, that keep us excited? And if you're not there right now, what do? You don't have to burn it all down. It's really about turning inward, making the decision to create space for yourself, to name what's no longer working, to remember who you were before you got so polished and professional and successful, to start making brave decisions that are exclusively for you, and to surround yourself with what I like to call expanders, people who reflect back your brilliance, who are good, really good, with you growing and expanding, and who are there to support you as you expand into more of who you are. Because the more lit up you are, the more magnetic your business becomes. And I know the road's not easy, but that's exactly what we do inside of Her Business. Help create you a business where you're doing what you love every day, which means you are lit up every day. And so you get to build a business that feels like you. You get to be fully expressed. You get to lead from a place that lights you up. You just need to take that next step on the path to being more aligned. And I invite you, if this episode has resonated with you, to do a couple of things. One is, do write to me and tell me how this idea of being more you, of being too much, if that's what we're going to judge it as, is going to actually help you be more magnetic. And the other thing I want to invite you to do is go deeper and explore this work with me further. I'm taking 10 women to Greece this year as part of a program we're calling the Her Business Trailblazers Experience. It's going to be held in Crete in Greece in a luxury retreat that's designed to help you rise back into who you're meant to be. And this is an opportunity to step away for a week from the day-to-day, away from the expectations, the noise, somewhere completely different, physically, mentally, emotionally, to create real momentum towards a business and life that lights you up. And you're going to be surrounded by 9 other women who are also choosing to stop dimming their fire and start blazing their own trail in a life that's aligned with who they are. Now, some of the spots are already taken, but as we're recording, I want to give you the opportunity to be part of that group of 10. And so if you're interested, I encourage you to head over to HerBusinessTrailblazers.com to apply now. But do hurry, because the program will fill. Now, as I've been saying these words to you, just know that I'm also speaking to myself. I've been in this period almost a year now where I'm really going deeper into how to be more me in my marketing, in my reels, in my conversations, in how I show up, and stopping knocking the edges of my too muchness, allowing myself to be more fully me. And I was talking to a friend about this. She said, but I feel like you're always you. And yes, I am always me, just like you are always you. But I know inside me where I'm silenced, where I'm hushing, where I'm afraid to speak up. And so for me, it's been an exploration of pushing past those fears. And my partnership with PJ, know that it doesn't go wasted on me, that he continues to encourage me to be more myself, to be more expressed. He's not threatened, and that is such a blessing. Now, I want to know how you might approach this idea of being too much so that you can be more magnetic. So I want to tell you how you can get in touch with me. Now, you can direct message me on the Her Business account on Instagram, or you can write to me at podcast@herbusiness.com. I want to share with you something that my team shared with me, because it's so aligned with today. And this is actually a review for this show that was from someone. I mean, I couldn't believe the words were so aligned with what we're talking about today. So she listened to the episode that I did with Lisa Shannon called The Secret to Being Seen as the Go-To Expert in Your Field. And in the review, she said, I love this episode. I especially liked it when you guys started talking about showing up as your most magnetic self can actually be designed, not left to chance. It made me realize I've basically been winging it and calling it authenticity. Time to actually design how I show up. Thanks, Susie. And so my encouragement to you is, yes, design how you're going to show up, and design it by just stepping more into you. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you would do me a huge favor and leave a rating or a review. Apple Podcasts is the best place to do that, but if you want to, you can also just direct message me on Instagram. Now, over on our episode page on our website, I'm going to put a summary of today's episode along with links to other resources that we've discussed. And you'll find those notes over at herbusiness.com/312. If you're new to the show, be sure to subscribe to get the next episode. And as we close out, I want to just thank you for listening. It has been really important for me to share this message, and I hope that it's been a little tap on the shoulder for you if you are dimming your light in any way to light that fire, baby. Thank you so much for joining me, and join me on the next episode for more inspiring stories and lessons from successful female entrepreneurs. See you next week right here on the Her Business Podcast. Bye for now.